when you're working on loops in any programming language, there's usually a few key variable types or components of the loops that we keep seeing over and over and over again. So in this program, we're going to see examples of those loop variables. So as you can see here, I've got the scanner, I've got number format because we're going to be working with money a little bit. So this is a great time to pause the video and create those components in the code. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a store program where the user is going to be able to keep track of purchases. So we'll have the cost of, say, an item that they're purchasing, and we'll also have how many of those that they will be getting. So this is the item cost and the item quantity. So what we're going to do is we're going to prompt them until they enter a 0. So we'll create a final int here, and this is our first variable type, which is called, there's two names for this. So you're going to see this as a flag or a sentinel. And this usually is the end condition. So like this is when we want to have our loop end. And for different programs, sometimes the flag will change around a little bit. Like say if you have a target number that you're looking for, this may be adjusted. So that's why it's important to declare this as a variable so that you don't have to dig through your code for all the places that you mentioned it. So then what we're going to do is we'll have item type count, and this is going to be 0, and this is going to be our counter. So this counter usually grows in a steady way. So this one is going to be just sort of, most counters are going to be like +1 every time. So you can always predict how they're going to grow. And then what we're going to do is we'll get a subtotal for our program. Now, this one is not going to grow predictably because maybe the user enters something that's $3 and then the next one is $7. So this one isn't a counter. When something grows unpredictably or it collects or accumulates values, it is our accumulator. So this one is grows by some result in the loop. And it's not predictable, so we can't keep that as our counter. So anyway, let's do a little intro here. So system.out.println. Let's say, welcome to Shop Assist 3000. Sounds pretty futuristic. So enter your purchase until you enter, I guess this should be plural, until you enter a 0 to quit. And let's put a blank line here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we'll create a do while loop here. So do, and then we'll put the condition at the end. So what we do for the while condition is, again, this is like an if statement for like, what is the condition that will make us want to loop? Now we know that we want to stop looping if they enter the flag. But the while condition is kind of like the opposite of the stopping condition. So if the stop condition, so if our stop is like the item quantity is 0, or the flag, I suppose, the opposite condition, the loop condition, would be the opposite of that, obviously. So this is when the item quantity does not equal the flag. There we go. We don't want to do a larger than. I don't know why they would create something with a negative cost, but we'll just leave that there. Okay, so now what we want to do is every time we start the loop, we are going to increment our counter. So this here is called an increment, which is a grow by 1. There's also decrement, which will decrease it by 1, but when we're incrementing it, we're going to grow it by 1 or by like that counter amount. So now we're going to prompt them. So system.out.print how many of the item. So we're going to item type count. I feel like I should have shortened that variable name. Did you purchase? And we'll give them space to put that in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have our item quantity is going to get the value of input.nextInt. Now what we want to do is we want to now ask system.out.println print how much did it cost and then we'll have our item cost get the value of input.next double. And then we'll tell them how much is added onto the subtotal. So system.out.println. Let's do a money.format. And we'll say item cost times item quantity. Added to subtotal. There we go. And now we'll actually add that value onto the subtotal. So subtotal plus equals item cost times item quantity. And before we go again, I'm just gonna make a blank line here, just to kind of increase our spacing a little bit. There we go. And then when we're done, we'll tell them what the subtotal was. You spent a total of, and we'll use our money.format here because it's an amount of money, and we'll display the subtotal there. Okay. Now, what we want to do here is we want to improve this slightly. So imagine we're going through the program and the user enters a 0 for how much they want of a particular item, and that should be what ends the program. So if they enter a 0, we don't really want to ask how much it's going to cost, and we don't, I mean, it'll put a 0 on, I suppose, but we don't want to mess around with the subtotal if they didn't actually enter an item. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an if statement here, and we'll use the flag. So if the item quantity does not equal the flag, then we'll do this stuff. Now we want to skip a line anyway, so I'm going to leave that outside of the if statement. And then this is now part of an if statement, so we want to select those lines and hit tab on the keyboard, and it's going to move that forward. So now if we run the program, here's what we'll find. How many of item 1 did we get? Let's get 5 of them, and they cost $13.99. And then how much of item 2? Let's say 8. And let's say this is something called costing, lost connection to my server. Anyway, I suppose at this point that means you get the idea and you should test this out. But typically we're going to see a lot of flags, counters, and accumulators as we work through each of the programs in this unit. So even if they're not specifically labeled, try and identify which ones are which, and it'll make you a lot better at programming with loops.